Well. Look what we have here. This is a first. We got a full house tonight. Boys, it's good to see everybody. How we doing? It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah, man. It's good to be here in person with everybody for once.
It has been, I'll tell you what, we have, during the Gem City Sports Podcast Network, we have done plenty of podcasts. In fact, we've done over 40 episodes already, which is crazy.
No, we
Crazy
haven't.
to think about.
Yes,
What?
we have.
No, we haven't.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
Okay.
Yes, now, the episode tonight, it says episode 22. It's a bit of an outlier because it doesn't include the hockey talk. It doesn't include Flagship City Sports Talk. It's the Gem City Sports Podcast only. We're over 40 already. I think this is 42. So it is hard to believe we're coming on 50,
Wild.
and by November we're going to get there. But in all those episodes, we have never once had the four horsemen of the Gem City Sports Podcast Network together. Isaac Petcash, Nick Artman, Jonathan Williams, Paul Adamczak joining us tonight as well. Boys, it's great to see you all. It's a great time together because we got so much going on tonight, so much to talk about. And what a time for sports, right? What a time if we're going to get all together. Why not end of October when things were just crazy?
This is my first time sports radio after dark. I'm fired up. I can't wait for this. We don't have like hard outs. Nick can't just stop me and go, "Hey, we got to go to a break."
That not hard out
I'm
might
excited.
not be a good thing, by the way.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
uncut.
Yeah. All uncut. That's the Patreon podcast. You got to pay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What a night tonight we got in store for us. So much to talk about. We're streaming live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch, on X, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to follow us at Gem City SN, whatever platform that might be. So much to get into tonight. And again, we are broadcasting this evening from the Millennium Sound Studios in Edinburgh. Thanks again to Mark Iser for making this happen. Second straight Thursday episode we've been here, so we hope to continue on a weekly basis doing stuff here. So much to get into tonight. Thanks again for being with us. And we're, of course, tonight talking about high school football. Playoffs are a week away. Week 10 is tomorrow, although there's not a lot of excitement with that because the teams that are, I don't want to say relevant, but the teams that are going to be really competitive in playoff time either aren't playing tomorrow or they have games that are more so just for senior night. And so we're going to talk some playoffs, and we're doing two things tonight. The panel is going to name their individual District 10 Players of the Year, which is exciting. We're going to give those accolades out tonight. And we're going to debate whether or not the committee should take 7 or 6 teams from Class 3A because, as we'll get to, there have been some opt-outs. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Also tonight, of course, some NFL predictions. We're going to give our bold predictions and our picks for week number 8 of action. Steelers, Bills, and Browns. Teams heading in different directions. I'm still not going to, after this podcast ends, agree with Paul, despite what his advances may make on me. But we'll see.
You don't know that yet. This is my first visit.
That's true. Maybe I can be persuaded.
He convinced me. I'll tell you that.
If there's a monetary amount involved, we'll discuss that a little bit later. And we'll talk a little bit quickly about high school soccer because there's a lot of great stuff going on there. Some great teams that are still in, and a chance maybe that multiple teams from D10 could make the state final if things are shaping up the way that they are right now. So a lot to talk about. We'll also quickly hit on Gannon Edinburgh so Jonathan can air his grievances. Just ahead of that game on Saturday. But we start tonight with high school football, gents, because the big news of the week were the opt-outs. And I think we expected a lot of the teams that maybe weren't going to make the playoffs, they'd opt out, right? I mean, the expectation, a team like a Maplewood, they opted out. Cochranton opts out from a Class 1A. But we were surprised, at least I was surprised to see that Harbor Creek and Grove City both drop out from Class 3A. Your guys' initial reaction, because I think this changes the entire playing field of how this could potentially work in the playoffs.
Paul, I'm coming to you first. You kind of the coach in the room here. What I don't understand the benefit. Like, are you seeing something that I'm not? Because I'm kind of with Isaac. I think where Isaac's going, I don't understand this at all.
I was more surprised by the Harbor Creek dropout than I was the Grove City one. Grove City, they've been a good team historically. The last couple of years, they've been on quite a run. They did not have a great season this year. That said, I didn't see that one coming. Although Harbor Creek, they would have been a 7th seed. They wouldn't have had a home playoff game, but they are looking down the barrel of either Sharon or Hickory. However, District 10 decides to rank those two teams, and maybe they're just looking at it going, let's finish the season against somebody who we're not going to get hurt against. We got a couple of guys who play basketball. I'm sorry to say I don't think the Huskies had a chance. Whoever their draw was going to be, whether they're the 7th seed or the 8th seed, they were going to get Sharon or Hickory, and they were going to get absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
So let's end the season on a
either one of
positive
them.
note. I'm just being honest.
Yep.
This is sports after dark. I'm just giving you my real take on this.
I don't disagree with you, but I think in Harbor Creek's case, right? Because we don't cover Grove City a ton. I haven't covered one of their games this year. I think it's a down year for them. They'll be back. But I think for Harbor Creek, with John Anger in his first season, and I know you have to make a decision on whether you opt in or out weeks in advance. But I just think that for this Husky team, this was a team that was stingy through the year, right? They played a lot of teams tough. Yeah. You factor in, that Fort LaBeouf game was incredibly close. You look at some of the other games on their schedule. They beat an Oil City team who I think has a legitimate chance to give Meadville a shot in the 4A semifinals coming up next week. And after their loss to General McLean, they won 3 of their next 5. The Fairview game was close. The Mercyhurst Prep game was close. And I just think in his first season with John Anger, given the fact that you have been able to bring a team together who lost a lot last year, specifically up on the offense and defensive line, it's surprising to me that you don't want to get your feet wet in the pool with playoffs, right? Even if you know you're not going to win the game. Give your guys a shot to be able to compete, because you have to know that some of those guys will be coming back. And if you want to be able to continue the trajectory that you're on in theory, you have to have that experience, right? I don't know. I don't see the reasoning for Harbor Creek. Maybe again, it's basketball or something else, but I was shocked by that one.
Yeah, for me personally, I'm new to this whole world of opting out of the playoffs and deciding not to play games. Listen, I don't care what you've done all season. I don't care what your record is. I don't care who you've played against, who you haven't played against. Playoffs is a brand new season, and anybody has a chance to win. And I know there's been perennial powers, and there are people that are supposed to win their first round games. Listen, upsets happen all the time. I am always a proponent of give your guys a shot. At the very least, you can say you took a swing at one of the better teams in the state or one of the better teams in your district if you go out and you lose.
Yeah.
But give your guys a shot to do something special, especially for your seniors going out, because that's their last chance to. A lot of those guys will never play football again. Right. So give them their last chance to do something special with their guys, represent their hometown. I'm not really a huge fan of dropping out of playoffs, especially when you know you have a spot waiting on you.
Nick, I'm curious, because we talked about Harbor Creek, but I think Grove City is the other part of the equation. We talked last Thursday with Wayne Bradford, and we said Grove City probably should be out based on our consensus, but because of the history with Mercer County, as Paul knows, the history of the D10 committee traditionally putting Mercer County teams in better seating positions. Most of the time it's warranted, sometimes it's not. Did this Eagle team maybe have a feeling that they weren't going to get in? Because again, when they made this decision, they were reeling.
Right.
It was maybe that part of the equation, because I find it hard to believe that Grove City thought for sure they weren't getting in.
And I don't think that maybe they were wrong to think that, if that's what they were thinking. I mean, they lost, they're on a 5-game losing streak. Their last win was against Slippery Rock, 42-7. Yeah. And Slippery Rock High School is not the same as Slippery Rock University. Slippery Rock's been 2-7 this year, 1-4 in league. So, they start out with a win versus Northeast. They start the season off. Northeast isn't the team that it was last year either. And you lose to a Fairview, or you win against a Fairview team, which looks pretty good. But that's really your only, I would say, big win of the year. So I don't think it is surprising. I'm kind of with Jonathan when I think about the opting out is still kind of new for me. When you think of do you guys know how this process works? Like, is it Grove City going to Harbor Creek and saying, hey, we're out, and then the game is over, or do both teams have to agree to the opt-out? Yeah, so I mean, I think the way that I've understood it, and again, part of this is in District 10 bylaws, you as a team individually opt out. Okay. There's nobody else that makes that decision for you, and there's a certain date that you have to opt out by. I apologize, I don't know it off the top of my head, but it has to be, I believe, a couple of weeks in advance of the postseason. Yeah. So you get an idea through 5 or 6 weeks if you think your team is either fit to play in the playoffs, if that's the direction you want to go. Ultimately, though, it's your decision as a team and your team only. Yeah. So I think for Grove City, maybe it makes sense. They're probably a little beat up. I haven't followed Mercer County football very much, but I would have to imagine a 5-game losing streak, losing your last 6 out of 7. I think you maybe just wave the white flag. Yeah, it's a big question because, again, that changes significantly the complexion of Class 3A, and it's the class we've all talked about, right? Yeah. Because now, and let's get into this, guys, now there's a debate. I don't think there's any debate about the 6 teams that are going to be in, right? Sharon, Hickory, Corey, Titusville, Fairview, Fort LaBeouf. Those 6 are good. Yep.
Now the question comes into play is, do you take 6 or do you take 7? Because I think we agreed when we put our playoff bracket together last week, we said there should be 8. We said Connie Otwood should be a part of it. Do you think that still happens now? Is there an argument to take 7 teams and put Josh Blood and the Conneaut Eagles in? I think so, but I want to get the panel's thoughts on this.
Everybody looks at me. I love that.
I was going to say,
we're going to Paul first.
Because right out of the gate, I'm like, I disagree with Isaac.
Okay.
For 2 reasons. The first is because then you give a number 1 seed the bye. And I don't like having a bye when not everybody else gets a bye.
But you're going to have to give 2 teams a bye if it's 6.
No, you just play one.
You have to give 2 teams. That's my point. If you take 6, you have to give 2 teams a bye. You give Sharon a bye.
1 and 2 get the bye then.
3 a bye,
and
then you go 3, 6, 4, 5.
That's right, because the playoffs are scheduled by week, not by how many you're in. Conneaut area is what, 4 and 5, so a sub 500 team.
Yep.
Into the playoffs. I don't know. I'm still leaning no, because 6 is an even number, and I want to take an even number into the playoffs.
Okay.
2 teams opted out. Was Conneaut ahead of one of them? Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. You could talk me into it because you can get me on an emotional level and say, hey, the senior class, they deserve it. They want a playoff game. They want the playoff T-shirt. They want the playoff atmosphere. Yeah. They want the swag. They want to say they played in a playoff game. Maybe they have a chance to win against that 3rd seed or whatever they could play. I just don't see it.
What would we be putting Conneaut in as? Would they be a?
Well, they'd have to be the 7, right?
If they'd be the 7 seed,
so they'd play Hickory.
They'd play Hickory, who they lost 263-6 week 3 of the season. I'm not in favor of putting them in the playoffs to get them massacred again.
I mean, I just think for me and Nick, you can agree or disagree with me because everybody else on the panel has disagreed. I think it's a good thing, by the way.
I think I came around at the end. I think I talked myself into your position,
which is hard to do, by the way.
We go from poker to screw the dealer. Now it's screw the host. I think for Conneaut, the reasoning that I have is why not? And I go back to my argument that I made earlier in the show. It's just about the playoff experience, right? How important would it be for Josh Blood, who has put, no pun intended, blood, sweat, and tears into building back up this program that hadn't won a football game at home before this year in about 2.5 years? They start off the season 2-0. The thing that does concern me is that they're 0-3 against likely 3A playoff teams. Their one big win, Grove City, that they won last week. Of course, now Grove City is not going to be a playoff team by their own volition. But I just think, again, even if coming in, you're probably not going to beat Hickory, you give those guys playoff experience. And for Hickory, too, listen, would be my argument for the Hickory Hornets. I would think you'd rather play a football game than not play a football game. How many times have we seen teams get a week or 2 off in the playoffs? And Cathedral Prep is the big standpoint in this. Mike Cray's teams in the last 2 years have had a minimum of 2, sometimes max of 3 to 4 weeks off. Mm-hmm. They come out in the first round of state playoffs and they struggle. Why? Because your stamina's not there. You haven't played games, or you come out hot and then you don't have stamina for the second half. I just think for Hickory's sake, I would want to play that game. I would want to have a first round game.
So I think I was kind of with Paul, and I'm thinking I want even numbers, right? But if you have 2 teams that are going to take a bye anyway, and you could potentially take 7, and maybe the history has been you take 7 or 8, then I probably do say go ahead and bring Conneaut in, give them a chance. Upsets happen all the time. If they don't want 2 teams to go on bye, then it does sense to just go ahead and give Sharon the bye, and then put them against Hickory, even though they're going to lose that game. I would rather have as the D10. If I'm on the committee, I would rather have 1 team on bye than 2. Give Sharon the bye, let Hickory come in and play against Conneaut. It's more about the playoff seeding to me than it is, does Conneaut deserve it?
All right, I'm back on the other side again. I'm saying no Conneaut, and I'll tell you why.
Just me.
Listen, no,
you
I came up with it. You were talking, and then I go, yep, he confirmed exactly what I think. So if you're going to give teams buys, so here's the way my logic on this. 3A is going to come down to Hickory or Sharon. That's the District 10 championship.
Probably, yeah.
However you want to play the teams ahead of that, I hope they all have fun. The 3A crown is Hickory, Sharon, and I don't want to give one of those teams a bye and not the other, because I truly do not know who the better of those 2 teams are.
What do you mean?
And I truly believe. Well, I know they
played each other,
right? But it was a 1-possession game.
But they played each other.
Right, but it not neutral
so
site.
We're not going to reward the head-to-head matchup?
No, not at all.
Really?
Yeah, not at all.
Okay, all right.
It doesn't matter. Because
even
the playoff game matters.
Even though the game was at Hickory and Hickory lost?
I don't care. Those are the two best teams, and I think between the two, Hickory probably has the best player on the field. Tellez. Anyway, I legitimately think the winner of that game, whoever takes the 3A crown in District 10, has a legitimate shot at a state title run.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to just give that to the team who gets a bye. I want them coming in even strength. I want an instant classic for the District 10 championship. And I want the team that goes on to the state playoffs to know that we didn't get here because of some chintzy scheduling conflict. We got here because we won the game against the team who had the same exact road as us. We beat them head-to-head in a neutral site game, and we're on to the state playoffs.
And if I were Sharon, my argument would be, well, we beat them head-to-head, and why would you then give Hickory the benefit of the doubt with us? I mean, again, that's
the District 10 committee makes these decisions anyway based on like their feelings and like the secretive process. Right. And I think basically the feelings and the secretive process, I think they would agree with me and just go, look, these two teams are so close.
I just think though the counter argument you make to that is that if you're going to say that these two teams are going to be here no matter what does it matter if one plays 1 week and one plays the other week? The only thing you worry about is injuries. And if you're Hickory, you play well enough in the first half, you may not need to play your starters in the second half. Yeah. It was going to be the same argument with General McLean before Franklin opted out too. I just think for the Conneaut argument, they got that big win against Grove City. They are the one team that you essentially would be excluding from all of Class 3A that's deserving. I mean, Slippery Rock's in there too, but I don't think they're certainly deserving of making the playoffs. I just think it really boils down to, for the committee, is do you feel like it's going to be too much of a burden on Hickory to have to play Conneaut? And I just like, if you're going to complain as a Hickory Hornet fan to play Conneaut, knowing that you crushed him earlier in the season, I think it's a win-win for both. Hickory gets a chance to play a game, may not have to play all their starters for the entirety of the game. And for Conneaut, it's playoff experience. I just think it's a win-win for both. If you want to give Hickory a bye too, sure. But then to me, then the Sharon Hickory head-to-head doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah, that would be the argument that Sharon would have, is what's the point of playing the game in a regular season if we know we're going to be the two best teams at the end of it? There's no point in playing the game in the regular season if it doesn't mean anything as far as playoff standing goes and the easier road.
It's fair.
I'm not going to stand here for the Corey hate. You guys are already ready to give Sharon and Hickory the crown, and
you know what?
Corey's like, go ahead, sleep on us. Go ahead.
You know what?
Go ahead.
You are so right, because Corey can definitely catch one of these teams slipping with their explosive offense. It's just, show me. Until it's been done, we have to assume, and when we're making our predictions, until it's been done, we have to assume what we've seen.
Yeah.
I do think, to your point, Nick, with Corey, and this is a good way to segue in terms of wrapping up 3A and the discussion here. Obviously, the seeding be what it's going to be. I think we know the seeding now. The only question is whether it's 6 or 7. Corey's going to be that 3, and it's likely going to be Hickory. They play in the second round. I think the biggest thing for Corey is that they have shown, even in games that they have lost, and I'm excluding the Fort LaBeouf game. That was a monsoon. Wayne Bradford made a good point. It came down to the 1 yard line with 2 seconds to go. Could have gone either way. Corey wants it back. The one loss that they have to a team that really the only team on their schedule that I think would have, outside of Titusville, that would have a legitimate chance of beating a team in 3A that's named Hickory and Sharon as GM. Corey played them well. I mean, Wayne came in here last week and he said, look, that was probably, outside of Newcastle, our hardest game of the season. Yeah. Maybe you throw Meadville in there, but Corey did a really good job of playing solid defense, and they didn't let the game get away from them. That was a big thing too. So, yeah, I agree. And I think too, that to me proves more of my point, is if you're Hickory, you want to make sure that, okay, 2 weeks off if you're hurt, I understand. If you're General McLean, getting 2 weeks off to get Jacob Zeitz back, to get those offensive linemen back, I understand it. But to Hickory, to my knowledge, and maybe I'm naive in this, I think is relatively healthy. So why wouldn't you want to then play a game, make sure you're fresh, and then get ready for next Friday? Because to your point, Nick, Corey is not going to be an easy game. Is Hickory favored to win? They should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should they win the game? I would think so, but it's not going to be a cakewalk.
No, and I think, I was looking at the same thing you were when you went back and looked at their schedule. The loss to Fort LaBeouf. Fort LaBeouf's been tough all year. The loss to GM was tight. They beat Mercyhurst Prep, who may be a AA team, but are still a great team. I do worry that, maybe they haven't faced, outside of GM, maybe they haven't faced a team as good as Hickory. And
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But like,
they did beat Titusville week 1.
Yeah. So
it's a big win.
That was a big win.
I do think they have a chance. Like, let me put it this way, right? Because Mercer County teams are always they're always stronger every year. I think if there is a chance for an Erie County team to come out of 3A it's Corey.
That's a completely fair point.
That's fair to me.
And I think the big part of it too is that they don't have to face a Mercer County team in round number 1.
Right.
I will say, it will be very intriguing in round 1, assuming they go Fairview 5, LaBeouf 6 because of that tiebreaker that Fairview has.
Yeah.
You're going to get a Corey LaBeouf rematch in theory in round 1 of the playoffs. That is going to be a heightened environment. LaBeouf's already got the win over Corey. Corey has gone on the record as saying, we want that game back. That to me would be the game that I'm like, oh, I'm licking my chops at that one. I mean, could you imagine a first round, let's take the 2-7 potentially out of it. Of Fort LaBeouf and Corey, Fairview goes to play Titusville in a Week 10 game that was supposed to be played tomorrow that got canceled because assuming they play each other next week, it could be an awesome first round in Class 3A.
I agree. It's gonna be fun.
If you're Corey, I don't care how bad you want the Fort LaBeouf game back. That's not the matchup you want.
Yeah.
In your first round matchup.
No.
You don't want to play a game that's going to be that hotly contested. Like, you don't want to play a game that's going to be that close and that much of a dogfight.
Right.
But for our viewing pleasure, it makes for great football. So.
And it's all about us.
It is all about us. Only sometimes we have to make sure that we appease others too. But on this platform of this podcast, it is our opinions and our opinions only. We're going to get to our D10 players of the year in just a minute. Before we get to that, I do want to talk, because we are starting to morph into playoffs. We're going to give our playoff predictions on next week's episode, because I think it's a little too early to do that now without knowing the seeding of who's playing. But I do want to touch a little bit on the 6A championship game, because that is one that is determined. It's Erie versus McDowell, the second time they've met this season. I just want to get your guys' thoughts on that game, because we talk a lot about these two teams going in, and understandably so, right? They're the two of the three biggest names in the local area in District 10. I'm just curious to see what you guys think in terms of who's got the upper hand in this game, not necessarily from the talent perspective, but more so from the momentum perspective, and what you guys think that this could end up being in 6A, because I think we could get another classic on our hands in the 6A championship game. And I think it's one to look forward to. I'll start with you, Jonathan, on this. We saw Erie in week 1. We've seen them periodically throughout the season. You saw a bit of the Prep McDowell game. What do you think this game could be? Because I think it could be a lot closer than what has met the eye before in previous years.
I also feel like it could be a lot closer, just because Erie has athletes. That's the number one thing that I've pegged about their team in the games that I've watched them play, and in things that I've seen about them. They have athletes. If they can find a way to get the ball into the hands of their athletes, you've got Paul Johnson. You've got guys that can make a play and make a big play at any given point in time. On the flip side of that, if you're McDowell, you've got athletes too. You've got playmakers. You've got Blaze Myers at quarterback. You've got Stephon Porter at running back. You've got James Ziegler at receiver. Like, you've got record-breaking playmakers on that offensive side of the football, where it's like, your mindset walking into the game is, okay, let's go in here and blow up the scoreboard on these guys and move on to playoffs. So it's going to be, it's really, for me, it's up to Erie. For me, it's which Erie football team shows up, because we've seen Erie play really well. And we've seen games where Erie was in the game when they probably shouldn't have been in the game. We've seen games where they were counted out and they played better and they played up to or beyond expectation. We've also seen letdown games from Erie. We've also seen, that game at Canisius where they lose 31-6, where you have a common opponent with Prep. Prep beat Canisius. You played Prep really close early in the season. It's like stuff like that where theoretically you feel like you should be able to go into that game and put up a better fight than you did. So it's really going to be a matter of which Erie team shows up. If Erie shows up thinking they can win this football game and confident that they can win this football game, watch out, because it might be closer than a lot of people expect it to be.
I don't disagree. Disagree with any of that. They played them very close back on September the 12th, a 28-24 final in which McDowell won that game. And then both teams really went on a heck of a run. McDowell has finished the year real strong. Nick and I have talked about this, I think, just about every week, about how McDowell has really hit their stride. They've kind of they've run the ball a little bit more this year. I think Stephon Porter is really the engine that makes that team go this year. Ziegler and Myers get a lot of the press, the headlines, and deservedly so. Program leaders in the history of the program, and they've played really well this year. But the ground game has really brought them through. And Erie, after that, a close loss to McDowell and a really close loss to Hickory. We know how good Hickory is. Yeah. They went on a 3-game run. They put up 74 points against Franklin. They beat a pretty good Oil City team. They beat Euclid, Ohio, which I think is a game that we all thought that they weren't going to win, and they blanked them. Canisius was the fallback, and that's where exactly you hit the nail on the head. Was what Erie team are you going to get? Because both teams were playing really, really well, playing hot at the right time. So when you get into the playoffs, it'll be interesting what Erie does against Meadville tomorrow, because Meadville's another team that's a playoff caliber team as well. They can run the ball with anybody in the country. We'll see what kind of defense Erie's able to play. And I think that'll be the key to that game is the Erie defense. And Coach Andre Henderson, of course, he's well positioned on that side of the ball. I don't see a high-scoring affair in the District 10 championship. I think it's going to be a slugfest between both clubs. Who has the edge right now? I think I'd have to say McDowell for the reason that they played earlier this year, and I think they're a team that has a little more history in the state playoffs. But I would not be surprised at all if Erie pulls out that game, because what you said, they can play defense and they have the athletes. When they get into their groove, not a whole lot of teams that can match them athlete to athlete.
I like them athletically.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I think Erie's about a year away, because I just think with McDowell and who they have, skill position player wise, right? We talked about Ziegler. We talked about our guy Blaze Myers, and then don't forget, the drop didn't work. So,
oh geez, our drop's not working.
No, that's okay. We'll figure this out.
I got one. No,
you're good. It was going back to the "Hit Me, Baby, One More Time" because
right.
Baby Porter is playing out of his mind this year. So I just think the skill players on offense of McDowell are going to be the reason they overcome in this game. And I say Erie is a year away because I think those athletes need a little bit more time to put together some strategy. It was a close game early on, but if you go and look at the teams that McDowell has lost to, those Ohio teams are powerhouses. Yeah. So you don't necessarily blame them for those losses. I think McDowell is on fire right now. They have the momentum coming into this game, and I think they have the skill to overcome Erie in that game.
Let me throw something out there. We've talked a lot on this episode in the first 25 minutes about how Week 10 is kind of irrelevant. I think if there's one team it's irrelevant for, it's Erie. They have a huge game tomorrow. They host Meadville. It's going to be a tape measure game for them, I think, for 2 reasons. Number one, it's a common opponent with McDowell, right? Trojans came in to Bender Field earlier in the season. They beat them 49-21. The offense looked great. I think Erie's offense would love to see what they can do against Meadville's defense. Yeah. More importantly, I think for the Royals, this is a great chance for you to test your run defense. Meadville's going to run a lot inside the tackles, right? Because they have that triple option, sort of wing T offense that they love to run. I think if you're Erie, you get the front 7 figured out in this game and you're able to knock those guys down at Meadville for 4 quarters, then you feel like, okay, we can take Stephon Porter out of the game. And if we take Stephon Porter out of the game, we have athletes that are capable. I'm not saying they will be consistent, but capable at being able to keep McDowell's receivers off the board. And if that's the case, to Paul's point, it's a low-scoring game, and I think Erie, the lower scoring it is a better chance to win the game. I think for the Royals, it's just about consistency. And maybe that's to Nick's point, is maybe they're a year away from being consistent, but they have had so many games this season where you look at the result and you're like, what? 27-25 to Hickory, 4-point loss to McDowell. You went and crushed Euclid. You beat Oil City. You shut out Franklin 74-0. Prep was a close game. It's like it's got to be so maddening for Andre Henderson because he's made such great strides with this team. But it's like if they could just have a little more of a moniker of consistency, they might be able to be 7-2 or 8-1 coming into this year, this game rather. But it's going to be a great game nonetheless, and we'll see exactly when that game gets played. I would imagine that it's going to probably either be put at Edinburgh or maybe Vets, but I would think probably Edinburgh, given the fact that McDowell's the top seed. That's where it was last year. But it's nice. We can talk about this game because it's the only one that's been determined so far officially.
Can I ask you this?
Sure.
Which head coach do you think this Erie team makes more nervous? Do you think Coach Henderson is nervous because of his own team, because he knows, man, we can get hot, but we can be, kind of slouch, we can have an off week? Or do you think Coach Slocum is looking at this Erie team, losing some sleep at night going, you know what, we're probably supposed to win this game, but man, I've seen that Erie team on tape, and when they get in their groove, man, they can beat us if we are slipping. If this could be a trap game for McDowell. If they don't take Erie seriously, Erie could come out winning this thing, and I don't think anybody on this panel right here would be that surprised.
I think the one thing you have to tell your team if you're Aaron Slocum coming into this game is we can never be comfortable. Regardless of the score, there is no comfortability that we can have because of Erie's up and down, right? Let's say McDowell gets out to a 14-0 lead. The game's not over. Just because Erie at some point is going to have a peak that they get to where they rattle off 2 straight touchdown drives, where their defense forces a turnover. But then it's the same thing for McDowell, right? Erie starts going on a run. Just based on history this past year, that at some point Erie's going to have a valley. And I think that that's really the key for Aaron Slocum is look, we just have to never be content with where we are because something is going to happen to change the momentum of the game. Sometimes it's going to be in our favor, sometimes it's not. But at the end of the day, we have to be consistent because we know we can be the team that's more consistent than our opponent.
Yeah.
One thing in football, though, man, it is hard to beat a team twice.
Fair.
So if you're Slocum, you have to be preaching that to your guys. Attention to detail all week long because that first matchup, if anything, it hurts you. The fact that you won that game because it leads to complacency. It breeds complacency. Oh, we already beat these guys. We got it. You have to be paying attention to every little detail and every small thing and be extra locked in heading into that game because it's really hard to beat an opponent twice, and especially a good team like Erie.
And I think a little differently than previous years where McDowell won the first game in the regular season handedly, not the case this year. So you don't have the same confidence level maybe going into that championship game than you have since the pandemic really started.
Yeah, and I think this one actually – the way it may come down is it's going to depend on the play of Blaze Myers.
Yeah,
because that front seven is going to it's going to be a 50-50 game between the McDowell rushing attack and the Erie front seven. And you mentioned the Erie defensive backs, and they're going to have some one-on-ones. They're going to play man coverage against those McDowell weapons. And at that point, a lot of it is on the quarterback, not only to make the right decision, but like you got to throw a good football because when you got a guy covering you and man, a lot of the success is predicated on can the quarterback throw a catchable football? Does he throw it to the right spot? So is the offensive line going to hold up enough in protection, and is Blaze going to be able to deliver consistently a good ball for his receivers? Are going to be facing some tight coverage.
All right, next week we're going to have playoff predictions because we're actually going to have the brackets. We'll actually predict the Erie McDowell game and all that fun stuff. And people will love us even more because I know my predictions have been ruffling at about 33%, which is why I never bet a dime on anything. But we're going to have that next week, and we're going to continue along now on the Gem City Sports Podcast. Remember, like, subscribe, follow us. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on X. We're on Twitch. We're wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching now, thanks for being a part with us. Here on our channel, we are continuing on with high school football talk, and we are going to crown the achievers, folks. There are a lot of them indeed. The audience was a little late getting to the party there. Sorry, the drop didn't hit in time. But it's time to announce our regular season District 10 Players of the Year. There are so many of them that we could certainly talk about and give that award out to. Here are the rules. It's not like our Flagship City Sports Talk where we have to give different people. We all can give the same player if we want. We don't have to give it to anybody different, but we're announcing who we think are our player of the year, the person that gave their team the most boost, that was the most dominant and the most effective and most valuable for their teams. And we will go starting with the Honorable Paul Adamczak. He begins our segment here with our District 10 Player of the Year. I know, I'm sorry. I had to start with someone, Paul. And you
went alphabetically.
Well, you see, on camera, we're going left to right.
Okay.
It's right to left on here, but we want to appease the audience. So we're going left to right as you would reading a book. Paul Adamczak, your District 10 Player of the Year.
So naturally, I come from Flagship City Sports Talk where I get to pick, like, Nick says, give me one name, and I give him 7. So I came in with a few options.
You give me like 7, one, and then another, and then another, and then another.
Right.
You ask Isaac to bring one, he fires off 3 at a time before he can even get one in.
Listen, I came prepared with like 6 different guys.
Yeah.
Just because I knew, like.
So I didn't know the rule that we could all pick the same guy. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't all thinking the same thing.
It's okay if we do.
So I'm looking at my list here, and I'm thinking, well, I know who Nick's going to take. I have a pretty good idea who Isaac's going to take. I don't know who Jonathan's going to take. So I came up with this guy. I'll put it this way. I talk myself into him, and the more I look at it, I'm like, the more right I am. You know what I mean?
Of course, of course.
So my player of the year, the most you said it, the most valuable guy to his team, right, has to be senior running back Jackson Covell from Titusville.
Oh, I like it. That's a good one.
And I'll tell you why. Most important player to his team. Why? Because he scored the most touchdowns in District 10. He had 27 this year, 2 more than anybody else. He had 21 rush, 5 receiving, and 1 pass touchdown. Can you believe that?
Jeez.
So 27 total touchdowns, 14 receptions, 337 yards, and 5 TDs through the air. He averaged 24 yards per catch. He ran for 1,470 yards on 133 carries. That's 11.1 yards per carry. That's a first down every time he touches the ball. And like I said, 21 touchdowns on the ground. Titusville, a very good team. They're going to be the 3 seed, we believe, in AAA.
Probably 4.
4 seed?
4 seed.
Behind
Corey.
Oh, okay. Well,
but still a good seed. Still a good seed.
Yeah.
Put some wings on it.
Fair enough. But again, I don't think I'm wrong. I think the most important guy to his team. If you took Jackson Covell off the rock, off Titusville, they're done. They have no chance at all in the playoffs. With him back there, hey, you know what? Find the big fella, give him the football. Football's not that hard in high school. Give it to your best player. Covell's the best player in District 10.
I love it. And I think to your point, Paul, this was a veteran team for Titusville. The new coming in, they'd have to rely on Covell in the running game. He and his brother Brock have been stalwart at the running back position for a very long time. I love it. I think it's a great pick, and it's probably off the board from what we're going to say. Jackson Covell is Paul's District 10 Player of the Year for the Gem City Sports Podcast. Jonathan Williams, we turn it over to you. You have plenty of options. You can go with Jackson if you want. You can go with somebody else, but I imagine you're probably going with somebody else.
Yeah, I took
this is what I'm interested in, because this is the outsider perspective. This is somebody who's not coming from D10 football. I want to see who.
Put it like this. I took a quick glance at your screen while Paul was talking.
So he took whoever was your second.
So I'm not going to say because that was where I was going as well. So I'm not going to say where I was going, but
that's a lie.
That's why I came with a bunch of different. I'm going to go away from the offensive side of the football. And
you're such a defensive back.
Of course, have to be.
I know exactly where Jonathan's going with this.
Justin Shell from Greenville, PA. 8 interceptions. D10 leading 8 interceptions defensively. But wait, there's more. 524 yards of all-purpose offense, including receptions and kick return yards. So not only a stalwart on defense and leading entire D10 in interceptions, but also very serviceable on offense and very important to his team on both sides of the ball.
I'll tell you what.
The defensive back takes a defensive back. I guess I shouldn't be surprised at all.
Those are some.
I gotta show some love because we're going to go with all of the big play guys and all the touchdowns and all of the receiving yards and rushing yards and everything else like that. I got to show some love to the other side of the ball because defense wins championships.
I'm all for it. I'm going to Nick next because as the host, I get to be last. Because I do not want to be the homer and take Nick's pick. He's already got his finger on the button. I can see it. Great pick, though, Jonathan. I really love it for your D10 Player of the Year. All right, Nick Artman, your District 10 Player of the Year. This might determine who you pick or who I also pick.
I was going to say, that's why I was hoping you would go, because I have 2 and I can't decide who I want to go with.
Pick one, I'll pick the other.
So, you know what? Gosh, this is tough.
Should we just play the drop?
It really is.
I guess there's 2 drops. Huh?
I was going to say, which drop are you going to play?
There's multiple drops to choose from in this list of guys.
All right. Just because he's been the guy that I think I've talked about the most, he's been a guy that's impressed me the most, that really came out of left field, was very unexpected. I got to go with my guy, Vinny the Don Feliciano from Mercy.
All right.
I mean, 193 carries for 1,733 yards. No, he's up over 2,000 yards.
He's way over 2,000.
Over 2,000 yards at this point. A scoring machine. And it's like, Paul and I talked about this. I feel like we talk about it every week. Actually, you give this guy the ball, he's going to score a touchdown. It's not like a Derrick Henry. Well, actually, maybe he is more like a Derrick Henry on the Ravens, but it's not a guy that you give on the 1 yard line to pound it in. You could give this guy on the 1, the 15, 80 yards away, and you have a chance to score a touchdown. You know, I think, Paul, you said this on our Monday show before, and it made so much sense. I'm going to pretend like it's my idea. He's that type of guy. Like when you're trying to rush the ball, right? You're just trying to rush and give yourself a little more space. Like, okay, let's make this a second and short or a third and short. Let's gain a couple yards on this. Feliciano's like, deuces. I'm out. I'm going to the end zone. So he's just so dangerous. And I think he stands out to me more than now the guy that Isaac's going to bring out.
Yeah.
Because I think it became so unexpected. Mercyhurst Prep last year as a team was incredible. Their offensive and defensive line was college level size. And then you lose Paul Johnson to Erie, and you didn't really know who was going to come. Prep is always going to be good, Mercyhurst Prep.
Sure.
But this is a guy that came out of nowhere and I think put the team on his back this year.
That's a great pick. And I can't at all. I got to go play the drop. We can't hear it, but the Godfather drop has been played, and it's official. Vinny Feliciano, the Don, is Nick's Player of the Year in District 10. So now I get to be the homer and I get to list mine. Let me play this drop really quickly because I think it's pretty obvious. How can you not say that Jacob Zeitz is not the District 10 Player of the Year? Let me give you some context, by the way, because again, I do talk to Marshall McCormick pretty much on a weekly basis from time to time, and hearing about his football team in the off season. And back in June, he had talked to me about how I know Isaac and Jacob Zeitz are talented. I know that they could really get us far, but I also know that to get the best out of them, I have to be able to come up with creative ways to get them the ball, because teams are going to be keying in on them. And I think there was a really big thought from Marshall when they played Newcastle in week 1 that was going to be a huge measuring stick as to how effectively in different ways they could get Jacob Zeitz the ball. And I think what they've learned this season is it doesn't matter how you throw the ball to him, just throw it up and the kid's going to catch the damn ball. This guy's got over 1,000 receiving yards for the season. He's the only General McLean player in program history that has 1,000 or more receiving yards. In 2 years, folks, he has racked up almost 2,000 receiving yards, 14 touchdowns this season through the air. And almost single-handedly got his team back into the prep game last week. I think this is somebody who can single-handedly take over a game. And the thing that I think he does better than anybody else, he is the one player, I think, in District 10 that people game plan for regardless of what kind of defense you run, and it just doesn't seem to matter. You can double team him. You can triple team him. You can play zone and have 3 guys on him at the same time. It doesn't make a difference. And I think he's aided by the fact that his brother Isaac is the quarterback. Those two have such a great chemistry together. They're able to understand where each other are on the field. I would make an argument, Jonathan, we and I were there at the prep game, that probably of the whatever it was catches that Jacob had, I'd say 3 or 4 of them were off script, where it wasn't necessarily a specific route. It was more of a, hey, let's go play backyard football when we played Hail Mary in elementary school.
Find some space.
Throw the ball up as far as I can, and you're going to go catch it. I think Jacob is a game wrecker. I think he's also going to be the most important player for a playoff team coming in this year. Hopefully he's going to be okay for playoff time. I know when I talked to Marshall McCormick last week after the game, he said the results were just a concussion, which obviously is not great, but it's better than what I think a lot of people expected when he left the field on a cart in that Cathedral Prep game. So we hope he's okay. We hope he's ready to go for the playoffs, because this guy, without him, I think General McLean would be a very solid, formidable team. But keep in mind, in 4A, the standard is Aliquippa. And that is what General McLean is going to have to go through if they want to make it the state championship game. And I think they absolutely need Jacob Zeitz to do it. I think he's the one guy that could certainly get them past Aliquippa if that ends up becoming to pass. Jacob Zeitz is my District 10 Player of the Year. But guys, you all have great ones, and they all affect the game in certain ways.
Yeah. I mean, there was so many. That's why when you said we could all pick the same, I knew we weren't going to.
Yeah, there was no
way.
way.
So many. I would have never picked Jonathan's, but I'm not surprised.
I had to go a different route, man. Because
nothing against the player. I agree with you. I just didn't see it coming. I should have known, but I didn't.
I had to be the oddball out, because I mean, everyone that you guys picked is on my list as far as guys that have been really impactful for their teams, and there's a couple more guys on this list that we could name as honorable mentions.
We didn't even talk about Stephon Porter or Blaze Myers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or we didn't talk about
Blaze Myers, Nolan Carey from Corey.
Carey's a great one.
We didn't go over a lot of guys that could have been up for this award, but defensively, when you have 8 interceptions in a high school football season and you lead the entire district in interceptions, I have to highlight that if nobody else will. So
I had a defensive guy on my list too. actually. Not a
No, you
defensive
didn't.
back. I had a defensive end, Zeke Carson Smith
Now
from
you're
Cambridge Springs.
Now you're just
Yeah.
pandering.
There we go.
Led district 10 in sacks. He has 9 individual sacks. The Blue Devils are 8-1. I mean,
That
he's
was
a
another
large
thing. These are great defensive players
Right.
on winning football teams. which means
on
they are
good football
impacting-
teams,
they're
correct.
Impacting games.
Well, you talk about Greenville, Cambridge Springs. That could potentially, depending on what Wilmington does, that could be a rematch of earlier in the season of the District 10 championship. And I can guarantee you, if Nate Liberty is watching this right now, he is just sitting in the shadows, waiting and saying, "I want Greenville one more time. Give them to us one more time. Let it happen. I want another shot at them. This happened last year. We didn't beat Lakeview. We got them again in the district championship game. We beat them." Cambridge Springs is going to have a difficult road. They're going to probably be the 3 seed and have to go through Wilmington and Greenville. But if there's one team that can do it with that defense, man, it's Cambridge Springs. Hey, let us know your District 10 Player of the Year. Maybe it's one that we talked about. Maybe it's one that you didn't. Let us know. Follow us, like, subscribe. Gem City Sports Podcast on the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. We're rolling along with you here on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, and on Twitch. Isaac Pekyash, Nick Artman, Jonathan Williams, Paul Adamsek, here in our Millennium Sound Studio. Before we get to some NFL talk, I want to do a couple of quick hitters, and we'll start. Paul, I want to just talk to you really quickly, and I want to get your thoughts on this because I know we don't talk about high school soccer a lot, but, as we've been going through, there are a lot of darn good teams that are still in these playoff fields. And I think, this is me personally, in boys and girls soccer, we could see more than one District 10 team in the state final this year.
It is entirely possible. Erie has become a soccer mecca in the state of Pennsylvania. We have a lot of club players, like United, like national level soccer players at the high school level, like U18 teams, playing on District 10 teams throughout the area. So, a lot of teammates playing against each other in, for their own high
A
schools.
lot of guys from Erie FC who play against each other.
Exactly. So we have both boys and girls. Really, really good clubs on this side of the state, and I don't disagree with you. I wouldn't be surprised if we had more than one representative across the 6 classes on both sides, boys and girls.
Let me quickly read out some of the teams. I know Jonathan's a big soccer fan too, so I want to get to him in a second. Couple of big games that are happening specifically in the brackets where I think we could have a team in the state finals. Starting in 2A boys, where legitimately this could be the state final bracket. There are so many teams that are just unbelievable, and unfortunately only 2 teams get there. Fairview is going to be in the semifinals coming up on... I'm trying to see exactly when that is. They haven't announced the semifinal time yet, but it's Harbor Creek. Yeah, they're gonna play Harbor Creek. That's gonna come up next week. That's gonna be a huge one of the semifinal. Then Cathedral Prep and Northeast. That'll be the 3rd time those 2 teams have played each other. They're 1-1 against each other. I think the winner of that bracket will likely be in the state championship game and maybe the state semifinals. Other games that we want to keep an eye on too in the girls bracket in Class 2A, I think whoever comes out of that's going to be probably in line for a state championship as well. Cathedral Prep gets General McLean in the semifinals. Fort LaBeouf will face Grove City. That's something I'm keeping my eye on as well. And also don't count out the 3A bracket, Harbor Creek and Warren, and what's going to be a really good one in girls soccer as well. So we just want to give a shout out to all the soccer athletes and teams that have been playing so well. Jonathan, I know that for you in South Carolina, football is really king, but you're a soccer guy at heart. I don't know if you got a chance to see any of the games, but you probably should because, I mean, these kids are legit.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to see any of the games because, and this is the point that I was going to make that everyone's probably going to hate. All of you guys are weird. High school soccer is supposed to be played in the spring. Why are we playing high school soccer in the fall alongside football?
I don't make those decisions.
Watch both. Split them up, put football in the fall, put high school soccer in the spring. I understand. Yes. College soccer is played in the fall. High school and college soccer are different. Let them play in warmer weather. Stop letting these kids play in the cold and battling for football, battling football teams for fans to come to their games.
Jonathan, my best hurdler is a soccer player. I need him in the spring, buddy. I need him in the
spring. Here's the problem that you run into it, and Nick said this a little bit ago that maybe you didn't hear because you were making your point. Ask all the baseball and softball teams when their spring game schedule starts. Because it ain't April. A lot of the times it is in early May. And I understand soccer's played on turf, but I'm telling you what, like these spring sport athletes get screwed. If it's not snow, it's cold and ice. If it's not cold and ice, it's snow. If it's not any of those, we have a tornado warning in the middle of the week. Like, I mean, these baseball, softball teams, and even track and field to an extent, they're not getting meets consistently or games consistently until like the beginning of May. It's horrible.
Yeah.
God.
And I will agree with you though, Jonathan. I think, you can't here in Western Pennsylvania because of that. But I do think that makes it hard for soccer, as fans, as players, because I do think, like, even for us for coverage, I mean, how much football have we talked all year?
Yeah.
Because that's what most people are watching. That's what we're watching. But soccer, it's almost, sometimes I feel bad because soccer kind of gets pushed to the wayside, and there are a lot of great soccer teams.
I mean,
out of it.
in a way,
to football, and that's no disrespect to anyone who plays
Yeah.
soccer. I'm a former soccer player. I love soccer. It was my favorite sport. But compared to football, especially in this country, it's an afterthought, which
Right.
is it sucks that they have to go up against that when in reality we have a lot of really good soccer teams in this area that deserve community-wide support and the crowds that these football teams bring out, but it's hard to do it for both.
Well, not all of us can have those 50-degree winters,
Man.
Jonathan.
I will make an argument too, and people won't like me when I say this, but there's a big enough soccer community that I think understands and agree. If we're talking team for team, player for player, pound per pound, soccer is the most successful sport in Erie County. More than football, more than baseball, more than basketball. There are more elite soccer teams in this area than any other sport. I mean, Paul, would you disagree?
I was going to say, in this area, you're not wrong at all.
Yeah, I mean, again, you just look at the talent that comes through, and that's why we want to shout them out and recognize them. I know we haven't gotten to talk as much about them as we have, but hopefully maybe next week we can have a team or a player on when we get to District 10 Championship Week. But just want to shout out all the soccer athletes and some of the semifinal games that are going on because it's darn good content in the middle of the week, and they deserve to be recognized. Yep. And we hope that the games are as good as they've been all season long when we get to District 10 Championship. All right. To college football now, as we are nearing the 1 hour mark on the podcast. These guys were debating whether or not we'd get to 2 hours. I don't know. I don't think we're going to get there just yet, but we hope you're enjoying us. We're still getting a good amount of viewership, so thanks for sticking with us here at 9:23 on a Thursday evening. Guys, I want to go to you, Jonathan, and just talk about quickly, and you guys can all pitch in on this. Gannon Edinboro happens on Saturday. It's going to be a noon game. It's not for playoff implications, but it is going to be an important game for rivalry's sake. It's the 18th all-time matchup between the Knights and the Fighting Scots. Edinboro has the all-time series lead 10-7, though Gannon's won 3 straight. Why do I know this? Well, I know high friends in low places, and I'm calling the game, so I have to know it. Jonathan, for morale's sake, which team is this game more important for, Gannon or Edinboro?
For morale's sake?
To win the game.
For morale's sake, Gannon. 100%, 110% Gannon. You have your one win on homecoming, which was a really good win against Seton Hill. You go to Slip, and it's not a terrible performance at Slip. Yeah. It's not what people might have expected to happen in that game. You put up a fight against Slip, 35-17 loss. But you got to get another win under your belt. You have to get another game in that W column. And from being in that locker room and being a part of that program for 2 years, we don't lose to Edinboro. It's that simple. Like, if you can't do anything else, you win the city. And we can't play Mercyhurst because Mercyhurst decided they wanted to be D1 now and don't want to play Little Old Gannon anymore.
Oh, man.
So, even though
I sense some frustration in that voice.
Jealousy is what I sense.
If I'm Mercyhurst too, I don't want to play Gannon and risk losing to a D2 school in the city after I go D1. It's a smart call on their part. There's no upside to playing Gannon anymore. However, that leaves Edinboro. You win the 8-1-4, Gannon. Like that's just what you do. That's the standard that we set in that program for 2 years. I don't care what you do or what you have to do to get it, but you win the 8-1-4. That's it. Edinboro's the only team you play from the 8-1-4 this year, so you beat them, you win the city. That's my monologue, and that's my WWE
Passion.
promo to my guys over there again.
We can hear Jonathan's
what
heartbeat.
You got to do, beat Edinboro.
I don't care what you got to do, brother.
I think Eric Rayburn needs to have Jonathan in the locker room pregame.
I think so. I think we could end this segment right there because there's your answer. Okay, you have a former Gannon player that fired up about how much they need to win this game. Imagine that locker room at Gannon. You want to talk about who needs this win more for morale? If Jonathan needs this win for morale, so does that locker room. So I think that's it. We call it home, wrap that segment up. Just kidding. But I do agree with you. Like, I do think it matters more for the morale aspect of for Gannon. I think Edinboro really wants it. If I'm Edinboro, I'm looking at this and saying, we can't beat Clarion, but we beat a ranked IUP. We almost beat Slippery Rock.
We beat a D1 team.
We beat D1 RMU. So it's like they have a little more like, yeah, we've had a good year. We need to figure some things out. I don't think this is panic alarms if they lose this game. If Gannon loses this game, panic alarms are going to be going off in the city.
Can I go ahead, Paul? And I'm going to counter that point in a second, but I want to hear you, Paul, first.
Well, what I was going to say was, so you gave some qualifiers to Jonathan. What team needs it more for morale? And a 1-win football team, I don't disagree with that.
They need a win, period.
They need a win, period.
Yeah.
Edinburgh is a 2-win team, and they have 2 pretty impressive wins. They've got a win against, you said it, a Division I opponent and a ranked opponent. Those are 2 good wins. But the rest of the season, not a whole lot of good. So who needs the win more? I think Jake Nolf is the guy in the stadium who needs that win more than anybody, because I believe he's coaching for his job at this point.
Yeah.
He's had a rocky time at Edinburgh, and he came in with a lot of praise. Now, again, he's got some really good wins on that record, but overall, his time in the borough, and I think he took over during like the COVID season, so we'll give him a pass for 2020, 2021.
Sure.
But we haven't seen the program rise in his time there. And if you come off a loss to Clarion and then come out and lose to, and I'm sorry, Jonathan, a 1-5 Gannon team, and not only do you lose to another bad team, but you lose the 8-1-4, which is a big thing in the mindset of the players. I think Jake Nolf goes into his coaching office that night and has to have the thought in the back of his mind, I don't know if I'm at Edinburgh next year.
It's an interesting take, and I think I'm going to go along similar lines as Paul. By the way, I will say for Edinburgh, I think this game's important to win because of who Gannon has out. Jaden Whitaker's not going to play in this game. David Morgan Jr. is out in this game. They're missing their top 2 corners, their top defensive linemen, one of their starting receivers, and one of their tight ends are all out for Gannon. They are banged up to heck and back, and it's going to be a skeleton crew when they come in there on Saturday. To Paul's point, I think for Edinburgh, to me, I think it's more important for them to win the game. I know Gannon, record-wise, would like to have a second win, but I almost attribute Jake Nolf's tenure in Edinburgh to what we are seeing with Erie this season. I am confused beyond all shadow of a doubt why Edinburgh cannot be consistent in how they play football. And I think what's concerning to me, if you're the Edinburgh fan base and you're looking at the schedule, is you say, okay, our 2 wins are to a Division I and a ranked team. Why can't we have that consistency week in, week out? To me, those sort of wins are more of a detriment to you when you can't win the games around them than they are a building block. Kutztown, I understand, right? This is a team in the top 10. They're probably not going to leave. I understand even to a point the Slippery Rock game, which they could have won, right? They're in the game until the 4th quarter. They have a chance late down in the game to win it. But then you look at some of the other games. East Stroudsburg, okay, it's a home opener. Maybe you have the momentum, but East Stroudsburg's a better team. But then you look, okay, Bloomsburg, Clarion. Edinburgh.
Clarion.
I mean, well, and it's the way they lost the Clarion game, too. This was an Edinburgh team that had a 3-score lead and ended up blowing it late. And I look at this team and I think, okay, clearly they have the ability to be able to rise when it's necessary. They've got the special teams. They have, in theory, the quarterback. Isaac Bernard has played well this year. He's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the PSAC. But to me, when you're this inconsistent and you don't beat the teams that you should, when you are pulling off big wins against teams that are a division above you, to me, then it falls at some point on coaching. I love Jake Precisely. I think he's a great motivator. I think he is a Mike Tomlin type in the fact that he can get anybody ready to play emotionally. But at some point, you have to look and you have to say, okay, if we're not winning the games we're supposed to win, then it's a problem. It's more of a problem when we're winning games we're not supposed to and then coming out the next week, building a big lead and laying an egg. So that's why I think for Edinburgh, it's important to win this game, because if you lose back-to-back weeks in the way you lost to Clarion, then you lose to Gannon for a 4th straight year, you get them at home. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to go as far to say that Jake Nolf is going to lose his job. I don't think that's up to me, but I do think there should be panic buttons and panic alarms set in Edinburgh. Gannon, they are what they are this year. This is not a good year for them. They've lost a lot of starters from last season. They're trying to rebuild. They've had a ton of injuries. Edinburgh, this was supposed to be a year you took a step, and so far you haven't done that despite 2 big wins.
Agreed on all points.
I agree with you. The only credit that I will give to Edinburgh is the losses that they've had.
Couple of close ones. If
I mean,
you're looking at it.
Lose by 5
realistically,
to Bloomsburg,
they should have 5 or 6 wins.
You
One
lose
to
by
Clarion.
One to Clarion. Like
Mhm.
they haven't. It's not like they've been getting run off the field in a lot of these games. Now, Kutztown blanked you.
But
That
at
was
what
just a
point
poor
do
showing.
you regress to the mean? And you got to win 50% of those one possession games, right? If you consistently lose one possession games, that's on coaching because that's that one play away.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just interesting, and it's going to be an interesting game. I mean, it's well attended no matter what. I think there's going to be a ton of people who are at the game. But I just think, despite the record, you're going to be there.
I will be there.
Jump up in the booth with me, by the way, if you want to.
Got you.
I don't think I can pay you, but nonetheless, I can't pay the guys here either. They just do it of their own.
I'll
free
see
will,
you
which
at the
I love.
snack bar.
Oh, there you go.
Concession stand.
There you go.
We'll make it up at the buffet.
What's your favorite snack, by the way? Do you have like a Halloween candy you're giving out in your neighborhood this year?
Listen, so not Halloween candy, but every time I go to a game, whether it's my son's t-ball, soccer, my daughter's soccer games, whenever I'm going to a game to cover or something like that, and I never buy it anywhere else, but there's something about going to a sporting event and getting Nerds on a Rope. Don't ask me why. They're disgusting. They're terrible. But I don't know, like it just reminds me like when I played baseball, that was what I would go after the game. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. It's just like it's like a nostalgic thing for me. So every time I go to a game, I'm buying Nerds on a Rope.
Man,
I got a cavity just listening to that.
I'll bring a pack in for you next week.
Are they like chewy or are they still like the crunchy Nerds that are?
It's crunchy Nerds on like a Twizzler.
Yeah, essentially.
Those
They're
are like
awful.
the 2 worst candies you can buy. 2 wrongs don't make a
I
right.
didn't say it was right. I'm just answering the question.
No, I know. No, it's an original thing, I guess. I didn't even know that they sold stuff like that there. I mean, I don't really get. You know, I will tell you what. My wife all the time. She loves the pepperoni balls. She's such a sucker for pepperoni balls, and I know it's an eerie thing, but like we go anywhere, and she's got that or a pretzel.
Yeah, they are everywhere. I've noticed at all of the high schools that I've been to.
Are you a fan? Have you tried them?
I've definitely
tried them a couple times.
I've
right?
definitely tried them a few times, and they're really good. But me personally, I'm a cheeseburger guy, and I like to compare and contrast which schools has the best burgers. Right now, Fort LaBeouf has to lead. Just saying.
Okay, all right.
Good to know.
Kudos to Waterford.
Fort LaBeouf got me. But
Have you been to Fairview? Fairview has a terrific
haven't been
concession
to
stand.
Fairview. I have not been to Fairview.
That's my recommendation.
Now, for my GM folks, I love y'all. You got to start accepting cards at your concession stands.
Wait, they don't accept cards?
It is 2024. Some people don't carry cash anymore.
Listen, I can tell you processing fees. I get why they don't. I'm just saying.
I'm just playing with y'all, man.
Oh, man.
For real, though. I did try to go and buy something with a card and had to get loaned $5 in the line. You guys are nice out there.
Breaking news. Next week, we are no longer picking playoff games. We are doing a power rankings of school concession stands.
I love that.
Jonathan and Paul will do the honors. Nick and I will do a top 10 in concession food. Nick's Nerds are number 1. They're probably number 2 on my not top 10, but that's okay. That's
why I look the way I do and you look the way you do.
What are you talking about? I wear black for a reason. Black is slimming. I wanted to put the black curtain up, but they wouldn't let me. Jeez.
10 years of high school play-by-play has me uniquely prepared for this situation. I'm just saying,
gosh.
I'm ready.
This would be awesome. And I also think, too, by the way, if anyone's watching and you run the high school concession stands, we will give you extra points if you bring food here.
Yes.
Next Thursday night. We will give you points. We may even pick your team, too. That's how excited we'd be for that.
We can be bought with food.
We can be,
Definitely.
yes. We were bought and purchased at Engine House. We can be bought and purchased here. We're all for that.
That's right.
All right. Speaking of being bought and purchased, the Cleveland I'm sorry. No, that's
Whoa.
I didn't have
See,
that.
I'm not the only one that rough transitions the Browns.
The Brook Park Browns. I guess that's where we'll start our NFL segment. And shall we? Let's do that. It's Thursday. We're doing bold predictions. We're predicting the game scores for the Browns, the Bills, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cleveland travels to Philadelphia in week number 8, as if their going couldn't get any tougher. They have to play the Eagles in what is now going to be a Jameis Winston-led Cleveland Browns. Of course, Deshaun Watson on the shelf for the season. Yeah, I know we can get to the laughing in a second. For the Achilles tear that he suffered last week against the Bengals, fans cheering. There were some players who liked that, some who didn't. We'll leave that up to you, whether you want to decide whether you like it or not. Nonetheless, guys, I want to get your thoughts. I think we all know the season's over for Cleveland, right? You're not coming back from this. What?
Hold on, I'm
very confused.
Baltimore's at Cleveland this week.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Oh, that's right. I thought, okay. And see, it goes to show how much I know about the Browns. The Ravens. So it's an even tougher opponent for the Browns this week.
Yeah, I don't think that helped them out very much.
Right.
So what, guys? What has to be the plan for Cleveland? And let me ask this question before we get to our game pick. Right.
There we go.
I personally don't think he should be, but we've talked a lot about Kevin Stefanski and the fact that at some point you have to have a scapegoat for Deshaun Watson. It's not going to be Jimmy Haslam. It's not going to likely be Andrew Berry. Does Kevin Stefanski keep his job past this season?
Are we going prediction first? Or you want the Kevin Stefanski?
The Kevin Stefanski.
Absolutely, 100%.
You think so? Okay.
Yep.
Now, this
doubt.
is interesting to me because he brought this up on Flagship City, about a month ago?
Yeah.
You laughed at him. You were like,
Yeah.
there's no way he loses his job.
Not a chance.
Oh, so you're still on that side.
I'm still not a chance he loses
I thought
his
you
job.
said he
Not
lost. I
Let
thought
me-
you were jumping and saying
Let me
he
hear your
definitely
reasoning.
loses
Let
his
me hear your reasoning for it.
Okay, so my reasoning is this. He just won back-to-back Coach of the Year awards. I believe that buys you one bad season, especially in that one bad season. You're saddled with a quarterback that you can't get rid of for the first 7 weeks. It literally did not matter how bad he played, and he played historically bad. They could not bench him. So now that he's gone, we're going to see some coaching maneuvers. I think they again regress to the mean. If they go 500, they finish the year. He doesn't look as bad because, just the right now, prisoner of the moment,
Right.
thinking people forget how bad the beginning of the season was.
Sure.
Second, it's the same reasoning I gave you a month ago. He has a scapegoat, and his name is Ken Dorsey.
Who's also calling plays this weekend.
I was
now.
going to say, and
Yeah,
they
that's
changed to that this weekend. The Browns this week are really, really interesting, actually, because so much has happened in the last 7 days. You get Nick Chubb back, you lose you lose basically your worst player. I'm sorry, Deshaun Watson. You get Nick Chubb and you change your play caller, and now you lose DTR, which didn't make any sense to have him as two, and you get actually the best quarterback on your team into the starting role. So new play caller, potential Hall of Fame running back. You have your better signal caller into the game. You're getting some of your offensive line pieces back. Conklin played a couple plays. Jed Wilson's been back for 2 weeks now.
Sure.
This Browns team the season's over. They're not going to run the table. They're not a playoff team.
Browns
It's all
wildcard
done.
Prediction?
No, not at all. Not at all. They're not even the third best team in their division. So their playoff season is done. But the Browns can play spoiler in every game the rest of the season, especially if that defense, the pressure's off.
Yeah.
The defense is actually pretty good. I know they haven't shown it up to this point, but they've gotten better. So they've got a pretty good defense.
Yeah.
And now you've got an offense. We've seen one drive from Jameis Winston, but I defy you to name a better looking drive that we've seen out of the Browns this year than the one drive that Winston took right down the field.
It's fair.
I think my caveat and my room for I don't know what I don't know. We haven't seen Jameis Winston in extended time in a couple of seasons. He's played some spot duty in New Orleans. I feel like people kind of have an idea of what Jameis Winston is. And I feel like people all think of the 5,000-yard year he had down at Tampa Bay. 21 touchdowns, 20 interceptions. He's a guy that is going to push the ball down the field. Pick a guy and let it fly, and he's not going to get lost in the paralysis by analysis, have wide open guys, and choose to tuck the football and run like Deshaun Watson seemed to do. He's going to be a guy, especially with Ken Dorsey, who likes to throw the football. He's going to have a guy who he can run it enough with, because I'm still not leaning on Nick Chubb 3 weeks out of, he's cleared to play full contact. A guy who's going to call some passes, a team that's playing free, and a quarterback that just likes to let it rip. And I think the Baltimore, because of how they started the season, they're kind of playing from the back burner. They got to get right, back to the top where they should be at the top of the AFC. This is an important game for them. This is a division game for them. Division games are always like a 50-50 or 51-49, probability.
Yeah.
I think the Browns can play spoilers. I think this Browns team is way more interesting this week than they were last week. And I don't think there's a single chance that Kevin Stefanski loses his job after the season. There's no way.
It's interesting. Okay. All right. Anybody else agree, disagree?
Not gonna lie, he kind of convinced me, so I'm gonna stay quiet.
I think I think it was very
over. That's why I wanted to hear.
I think it was very
we call him the
telling.
judge.
I think it was very telling that he gave over his play calling job to Ken Dorsey. I think, to me, it's more of a job saving move for him. Knowing
That's what I'm going to say.
Yes.
Yes,
I
exactly.
mean, again, I think me personally, I think Jameis Winston is a better fit for the Kevin Stefanski offense than Deshaun Watson is. He can get the ball down the field, distribute to tight ends. I mean, this is a guy who is allergic to not taking risk, and Kevin Stefanski's offense is all about taking risks.
Yeah. I think it's highly unlikely it happens. Like you said, he's won coach of the year twice in the last 4 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're going to have Winston come in. You pass the offensive play calling duties so that you have your scapegoat now. But let me throw a scenario, so that's where I think is going to happen. But let me play devil's advocate for a second. If this is Haslam's idea to keep Watson, and he's going to force this for the next 2 years, does Haslam go ahead and say, okay, Stefanski, if you can't make this work, I'm going to find somebody that can? So I think for me, it depends. Like, I've joked about this for a couple weeks. Every time I watch a Stefanski interview with Watson, as yes, we're sticking with Watson. I just want to be like, dude, blink twice if you're kidnapped. So like, if that's the scenario where he's being force-fed Watson, and he goes to Stefanski and says, hey, like, we either need to make this work, or I'm going to find somebody who can. And Haslam, if he's that type of owner, a Jerry Jones style owner, this would be the first time. But if that happens, I could see a pathway where it's like, okay, this is a difference of opinions, and Stefanski will hit the job market and will have a job in like 10 seconds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He'll be picked up immediately. Sorry, I heard feedback coming from somewhere. You're good.
No. I'm with you. I agree. And I think it's interesting because, again, I think this is sort of a time for Kevin Stefanski that you would think you'd want to show what he is as a coach, but he already has, right? The 2 coaches of the years, I think he's been able to make amends with guys who have not been superstar-esque quarterbacks. And so maybe you give it over to Ken Dorsey, you cool off the hot seat a bit, and you kind of coast the rest of the year. Anybody at this table think the Browns are going to pull off the upset Sunday? If so, raise your hand.
We have a crickets.
Get out of here.
Please.
No way. Okay.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
I don't know. The Browns' run defense hasn't been great. Derrick Henry's going to be like a top 3 running back all time.
So let
He's a
me
Hall of
throw
Famer.
this
He's running
stat.
well.
Let me throw this stat out here, and this I say that I picked them for 2 reasons. Number one is last season, Lamar Jackson against Cleveland had arguably his 2 worst games. He had 2 total touchdowns, 3 total interceptions, and he was sacked 6 times. We have not seen this Browns defensive line up until last week really wreak any havoc. But when they do it typically at home. They were the number 1 ranked defense at home last year and one of the worst on the road that last year as well. I think that they can be effective to Lamar Jackson. I'm concerned about the run game, but I equivocate this game to what you would be like if you had fired your head coach, because it's similar to what Cleveland's facing now, right? They got rid of their starting quarterback, who a lot of them didn't want. I think probably for the first time in 8 weeks, this Browns team believes they can genuinely win a game, and that they might be able to genuinely be the better team. So I think there's going to be a rebound effect to this for Cleveland. I think it's an ugly game. I think the Browns are going to pull this off. I know it sounds crazy, and I'll probably get laughed at on Monday on the show. I just see this. I see this being one of those games where you got Baltimore on a roll, right? They've won 5 straight games. It just seems like they're the team to beat in the AFC right now, minus Kansas City. Cleveland's got nothing going for them, but Jameis Winston takes the lid off of the Ravens secondary. I think Cleveland's going to win the game. All right, that's my bold prediction. Good night, everybody. No, we still got more stuff to talk about. Let's talk Buffalo, Seattle really quickly, guys. Not a lot to talk about.
Yeah, notice he doesn't let us just kind of.
Yeah.
Okay, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Sure.
It might be for the best that we're going ahead.
No, yeah, I'm ready. We've already talked about this game too much. Keep going.
All right. Nothing really to talk about in general with the Bills and Seahawks. I do think Buffalo has gotten a little bit better on offense after that 2-game losing streak. Let's pick the game, and we'll start with you, Nick. Who wins Buffalo, Seattle on the West Coast? I don't think these 2 teams have played in 4 or 5 years.
This is a really tough game for me because I'm a closet Seahawks fan this year. I like what McDonald's doing out there. Geno Smith is playing great ball. I love the rushing attack in Seattle. I think when it comes down to it, when you have 2 tight teams that are similar in play style and talent level, I mean, Buffalo's only favored by 2.5. This is going to be a close game. So I think when I look at a game like this, I look at who's going to make the difference in this game, and I think Josh Allen makes a difference in this game, so I got to go Bills by 3.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bills win this game. I think it's a low scoring. Mike McDonald, you make a great point, Nick. This guy has been, it's in my opinion, I think he'd right now be top 3 for Coach of the Year. Just in terms of the way he's been able to get that defense back to where they were-ish with the Legion of Boom. I think Geno Smith is being productive enough. People don't talk enough about Kenneth Walker and how much of a great year he's had. I do think the Bills are starting to find some depth at running back. That's been something that really has gone under the radar with the addition of Amari Cooper. Ray Davis has gotten more snap count. He essentially played 2 straight drives in a row in the win over Tennessee. I think James Cook's still there as well. Amari's only going to get better. I think Buffalo wins 23-19 over the Seahawks in a low-scoring game. Jonathan, what say you?
I'm going with Seattle. Close game, not a very. It's not going to be a blowout one way or another. I think we all are kind of in agreement that it's going to be a close affair, and it's not going to be a very lopsided game. Traveling to the West Coast is difficult.
Bingo.
It is. Yeah.
Traveling to Seattle and playing in that stadium as an East Coast football team, it's a difficult thing to do. It was something that I remember us talking about when we were previewing the season when the schedule first came out, of like, this could be trap game-esque for Josh Allen and the Bills, and traveling that far across the country, playing on the road against a Seahawks team that just had a really good performance against the Falcons. I'm leaning Seattle. I think Seattle is trending in the right direction, and that game being at home in Seattle, I think, is the deciding factor.
I also think it's a close game. I think the Bills are much better, but I think because of the defense and the atmosphere, is it Lumen Stadium, whatever it's called
Something
now?
like that. Whoever paid the amount of money to.
I know, but it legitimately is one of the toughest places in the NFL to play.
12th man.
The 12th man, absolutely. So I think the Bills win this one in close fashion. I do know the Seahawks are dealing with a bit of an injury. We'll see if we see DK or not. But the Seahawks are good. They have a defensive-minded head coach, so you know it's not going to be a high-scoring affair. They have the over-under in this one at like 46.5 points. Worst gambler in America, but I would hammer the under in this one.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But I think I can see the Seahawks winning. That's another one, almost like the Browns beating the Ravens. I can be like, well, I can see that because it's a division game. I can see the Seahawks beating the Bills because the Seahawks are not a bad team. They're an above 500 team, and the Bills have a tendency to just have stinkers every now and again. I can totally see this as being one of them. I think the Bills are the better team on paper.
Yeah.
I tend to think that in the NFL, the better team wins more often than not. So I'll pick the Bills in a close one.
You know, I think for betting, because we don't have the money to be able to pony up at this point in time, we're kind of a startup organization right now, so we can get away with that. I think we should just have a wing pool. Because Wayne owns me a dozen wings right now for picking the Bengals to win last week. We should just keep adding to it.
Yeah, what a terrible pick.
Yeah, God, it's almost like Cincinnati's got a better quarterback and a better. Anyway, that was.
I'm guilty too.
I love Wayne. He's a great guy. I don't want to pick on him too much. All right. Before we get to the Steelers picks, Paul Adamczak, you have the floor. Convince me why Russell Wilson should be the starting quarterback moving forward.
Well, I think a lot of things that I said on Monday, because of what we saw Sunday night. This is the style of offense that he succeeded in college at 2 different colleges and then in the NFL. This is not the wide open, like I said, he went to Denver and they brought in Nathaniel Hackett. Hackett was coming off a season in Green Bay where he coached the MVP Aaron Rodgers. So he just thought, well, that's what you got to do to succeed. I'll just bring that to Denver and I'll just run the Aaron Rodgers offense with Russell Wilson. What we've been told is Nathaniel Hackett is maybe one of the worst coaches in NFL history that single season. So I don't really put that on Russell. Then they bring in Sean Payton, guy who's had a lot of success in the NFL, had it with a different style quarterback. He had Drew Brees. They're trying to throw the ball 50, 60 times a game. Drew Brees is great at that. That's not really Russell Wilson's game. And he had some injury history out there. Playing in Mile High Stadium is a little bit different than playing most other places in the league. And it just didn't mesh. And he just looked older. He wasn't the same Russ. He didn't really have the magic. I don't think he was really afforded the protection, the kind of time it took for him to get into that offense and become comfortable with it. Fast forward to Pittsburgh. Has a pretty good training camp, as far as we know, because Mike Tomlin put him in pole position pretty early on.
Yeah.
Had the calf injury. I think that lingered a lot longer than anyone thought it would. But I think the reason you keep him at starter is because of exactly what you saw on Sunday night. The style of offense that they plays in behooves Russell Wilson's skill set. He's a competent under center quarterback, which Justin Fields, I'm sorry, struggled snapping the ball. Okay. That's something you got to fix in high school. I don't think you can run too many off. There are very few guys in the NFL who are like high-end quarterbacks who cannot play under center. I remember this was a thing when Lamar Jackson came into the league out of Louisville, complete shotgun guy down in college. He had to learn to play under center. He's done a pretty good job of that. Justin Fields, not so much. Russell Wilson is a much, much more comfortable, competent quarterback under center than Fields. Okay, so a lot of that Arthur Smith offense comes from the under center. They have the 240-pound tailback. The Najee Harris, Marshawn Lynch comparison to me is pretty easy. And I think you saw in 2 quarters, Russell Wilson got more out of George Pickens in those 2 quarters than Fields got in the first 6 games. I think he just naturally makes deep receivers better receivers. I mean, he took average. You remember Doug Baldwin? Doug Baldwin was good nowhere. He turned Doug Baldwin to an all-star because of his anticipation and ability to throw the deep ball. Yeah. I think Pickens is a more talented receiver, albeit built a little bit differently than like Doug Baldwin and even like the Lockett and the DK. But like these were dudes, just other guys who Russell turned into stars because of his ability to place the football. The term moonball has been used a lot this week. It's that high arching football. And I was going to say, and I talked about it with Nick, it's kind of weird to see on the NFL level because people tend to think, well, he lacks arm strength. That's why he has to throw it real high. Well, what he does when he throws it real high is that ball doesn't come straight through and give defensive backs like Jonathan Williams an easy chance to pick it off as they take the angle. You have to beat the receiver downfield, and the quarterback's not throwing that football unless he sees his guy is in front of the defensive back. And he puts it on a trajectory in that if his receiver can't get underneath it, the defensive back is not in position to pick it off. So, like, he's going to turn the football over less. What do you give up when you go away from Fields? The athletic, holy crap, look at that place. And, like, I'm not going to say that Russell Wilson, who's a very good athlete, he's a mobile dude. He's not anywhere in the stratosphere of Justin Fields. All right? So I thought, my thought now is the same as it was at the beginning of the season. Russell Wilson should play 95 to 98% of your snaps, but you absolutely should have a package for Justin Fields because the athleticism can't be matched other than maybe like a Lamar Jackson. That's it. That's who's on his plane. But I think winning consistently, you have the defense to win games. For the games that they do give up more than 20 points, Russell Wilson's your only shot.
I give applause.
I thought the censorship beep was coming.
I was going to say, I wasn't sure what was coming.
It is a good argument, and there are a lot of points that you made that I agree with. I am still not on that train. And I think I will tell you that I'm intrigued. Everything you mentioned about Russell really like. I think he's got a much better deep ball to your point than Justin Fields. I think he can see the field a little bit better because of the experience. And that is something that you do gain with Russ that you don't have with Justin, is that experience of understanding maybe more progression type than what you have with Justin. There are a few concerns that I have with Russ, though, that I still think is something he needs to figure out. This guy can't throw the ball down the middle of the field. He can't. This offense, when they have him in at quarterback, are a sideline, hash mark, and to the boundary only. And that's something that last year was a big concern for Pittsburgh because you didn't have that middle of the field threat that was able to run the tape, run the slant, run the in route. And when that's the case, my concern is at some point, teams are going to get film on Russ. They're going to realize, okay, we take away the deep ball.
How much more film are teams going to get on Russ? For 10 years.
Keep in mind, it's a different offensive scheme, right? I think that's a big part of it as well. I just think that at some point, teams are going to pin their ears back and say, listen, Pittsburgh, you're going to have to run the football on us because they can't throw the ball down the middle of the field.
Which I think Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin both say, good,
yes, please.
Muck it up. Yeah, they want to run the football and control time of possession.
And that, at the end of the day, then that relies on Najee, who had a good game last week and has not really had a good year since then. The other thing that I'm concerned with Russ, in addition to his lack of ability down the middle of the field, I think another big thing, in addition to mobility, is my concern inside the red zone. They were not very effective minus the last drive or so in the second half inside the red zone. I think it's because of the lack of options that they have. You mentioned Najee Harris and the ability of the tailback position who can run the ball downhill. Jaylen Warren hasn't been unlocked yet with Russell Wilson. I don't know if he's going to be because of the type of...
He had a good game last week, and they had good distribution, 21 carries for Najee, 12 for Jaylen Warren. That's about what I want to see between your one,
for
two
me,
back.
For me, more for Jaylen, it's more so of his ability in the passing game. I think this guy is more of a James Cook type, where when you can get him out on wheel routes and screen routes and things of that nature, I think that's when he's at his best, and I don't think you can unlock that much with Russ. I think the red zone play is going to be key for Pittsburgh because you now don't have that athletic option. I'm concerned that Russ will leave points on the scoreboard. And even though it wasn't necessarily the case last week, I think the other thing you have to take into account were the turnovers that the defense forced. They forced 3 of them. Pittsburgh did punch into the end zone the majority of the time, but I also think a big part of it was because of the fact they got the ball inside the 10, inside the 7 in a lot of situations. So I am reserving judgment on Russ for another couple of weeks. I do think he deserves the start against the Giants. I would just be concerned and pump the brakes to say, once teams start to play cover 2, pin your ears back, and you get that high safety over the top, whether it's Grant Delpit with Cleveland, assuming that they're healthy on the back end, whether it's Kyle Hamilton with Baltimore, Cincinnati's going to play that way. The teams Pittsburgh plays down the stretch of the season are going to force you to have to play to your weakest part of your game. And even though I think Justin Fields may have a lower floor than what Russ does, my argument all year has been, without the turnovers, his ceiling is higher because of his mobility and his ability to throw the ball in the middle of the field. So does Russ deserve another start? Sure, I think so. I just would be concerned that when you get to the later point in the season, you don't have a guy with enough tricks in the bag to be able to beat those other teams. But it's a good argument that you make.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I have 2 points that I want to push back on, just kind of like how you counter them. The first is you talk about, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to play cover 2, you're going to say Pittsburgh run the ball. I think when you do that, Pittsburgh, 1, they're capable of doing that. And 2, I think with Russell Wilson in there, that run the ball, you need to be perfect because this is going to be a 17-14 game. I think what Russell Wilson does is better than Justin Fields is he doesn't miss layups, right? Fields has a lot of those, too many of those. Just like, what were you doing there? You need to make the easy pass. Russ doesn't miss layups. And in second, you talk about the red zone offense. Valid concern. This is where I said 95 to 98% of the plays Wilson should be in. That doesn't mean you get into a red zone situation. It's whatever, inside the 20-yard line, whatever you want to do. That's a great opportunity. You're going down the field with Russ. It's handoff. It's roll action, roll out. It's play action. It's this, is that. You get in the red zone. Okay, he's a little stale. Boy, what an opportunity to absolutely switch things up. Put Fields in for a play or two. I'm not saying that you can't play him at all. It's one or the other. But if you've got this style of offense with a guy who doesn't miss, who hand the ball off and create some plays with his downfield, you got to defend downfield. Yeah. If you have a guy who can throw it downfield, you got to defend downfield, which opens things up underneath. And then when you get to that red zone, what an opportunity to use the weapon in a limited role, right? To capitalize on the athleticism, but also not put him in for too many plays where you get that low floor. Oh man, that really killed the drive.
Jonathan, do you want to jump in and cool these guys down, or you want me to?
I'll cool them down and take us back towards game predictions.
All right.
Wow.
The host isn't doing it, so we'll let the guy who is right do it.
While I am the resident Giants fan, I'm not very confident in our ability to do very much in this football game. The one interesting point I will say, I got Giants losing. I have Pittsburgh winning this game regardless of who plays quarterback. But the one interesting point that I have been looking into and I've been thinking about, Giants, when they're on, have a decent pass rush. Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah, they do.
Mm-hmm.
Dexter Lawrence is a really good pass rusher. He has, I don't know the exact number of sacks he has this year, but he has a really good number of sacks this year.
He's a freak.
And he's playing against a third-string center.
He leads the league with 9.
Yeah, it's
scary.
That's a matchup that I'm looking at up front where it's like, who would you rather have against a Dexter Lawrence whipping your third-string center and getting into the backfield? Would you rather have the mobile Justin Fields that can escape pressure and make things happen with his legs? Or would you rather have a more pocket-style quarterback in Russell Wilson who, to your point, is still athletic, can still get outside of the pocket, can still do things, but it's nowhere near to the level as Justin Fields as far as being able to make a guy miss and escape a rush. That's the only thing that I look at for this game that's a little bit interesting is if the Giants pass rush is on, they can make this game a lot closer and affect Russell Wilson in ways that could affect the pass game and affect his ability to go down the field and throw deep balls and things of that nature. So that's going to be interesting for me. Do I think it's enough for the Giants to win this game? Absolutely not. But it's going to be interesting to watch and see how much of an effect the pass rush has on Russ.
And Thibodeau versus those tackles will be very interesting as well.
Paul, you have Pittsburgh winning before we get to Nick quick?
I have Pittsburgh winning.
All right, I got Pittsburgh winning too. Nick, the floor is yours. I'm sorry, we've been keeping you waiting.
I'm all fine with it because it's fun to watch you two go back and forth.
I don't know if this argument's ever going to end, by the way.
I don't have to push back, Paul, for a change. This is nice to watch somebody else try.
Add a boxing round to the drops. That needs to be added to the list.
We talked about a few years ago how Pittsburgh, like death taxes in Pittsburgh trap games. This is not one of them. This Giants team is just bad. Danny Dimes hasn't thrown a touchdown on home since 2022.
Are we still sticking with the Danny Dimes thing?
I mean, it's like Danny Nichols now, like pennies. I mean, it's getting worse, getting less and less valuable.
Danny Shekels.
Over 650 days since he's thrown a touchdown at MetLife Stadium. That is not good going into a Monday night game where I saw this on ESPN earlier. This is the Steelers have not lost a Monday night football game since 1991. And if you're telling me that Tomlin doesn't track stats like that, you're lying. He loves that kind of stuff. So, those are just kind of two. Is
that true?
Listen.
Yeah, you're not. I don't think you're wrong.
Fact check it on ESPN. Pittsburgh hasn't lost a Monday night game at home since 1991, a streak of 21 straight wins and counting. They're going to win this game.
You waited until 10:01 p.m. to bring out the stat of the night.
Well, you two were busy talking about red zone percentages, which I don't know what you were seeing, because I love, like, not to fire us back up. I do think Russ is a starter the rest of the season. This was never Fields. And maybe I wanted it to be like, I wanted Fields to kind of come in and take over. Like, you always kind of root for the underdog.
There's no doubt he has the higher ceiling.
Sure,
he excites the fan base. Absolutely.
But Tomlin's been up front since this at the beginning. He's always been in pole position. Russ will be in pole position. This was never Fields' job to win. This is Russ's job to lose. And until he loses that game or loses that job, it's his for the rest of the season. When I saw the red zone chances and he's throwing a touchdown pass to Van Jefferson, I'm watching that pass and I'm going, Fields doesn't make that pass, because he's not willing to risk it to fire it in there to Jefferson. He's just going to take off and run. I think they would have won the game against the Jets either way with Fields or Russ. But to watch Russ come in and play that well against one of the best defenses in the NFL, he did enough for me to go, okay, Tomlin, I trust you. I'm going to go with Russ, and I'm going to go until he loses this job. I'm not saying he's Ben Roethlisberger is going to take the Steelers to the Super Bowl, but I do think he gives you a better chance of winning games in that offense. So coming back around to the Giants, you put Joey Porter Jr. to shut down Malik Neighbors, and then that offense is done. That offense is flat, game over. So then you think, like you were talking about, the pass rush with Dexter Lawrence. Oh, and don't forget about Brian Burns. If the Steelers, I did forget. No,
new Tibbs. I forgot.
Oh wait, there's more.
If the offensive line can play as well as they did against the Jets, and they can keep Russell Wilson upright, and they can open holes for Harris and Jaylen Warren, yeah, I think this is an easy game for the Steelers on Monday night.
It is very interesting because you look at Pittsburgh's schedule and you say, okay, 2 weeks ago we were concerned 3-2, you lose 2 straight more, you're 3-4. Maybe you're looking at maybe a 5-4, 4-5 going into the bye. Commanders, which is their next game after the Giants, may not have Jaden Daniels. Even if they do, the Steelers look more improved. And as much as there's been the controversy, and I think it is a good controversy, Paul and I may disagree the whole year, but I think at the end of the day, the good news is for Pittsburgh is they've had 2 quarterbacks that can prove they win games. And if you're the Steelers, you go into the bye, maybe you take care of business, you're 7-2. Now all you need to do is find 3 wins. Can you sweep the Browns? Can you beat the Bengals once? Can you beat the Ravens once? You're going to probably win 3. All right, well, then I guess I got to beat Mahomes on Christmas then. That'll be a good game to watch with my new daughter. Hopefully they get a win there. I got to still convince my wife for my kids to be Steelers fans, but that's beside the point. I do think when you look at this Pittsburgh schedule now, you say, okay, you get to the bye at 7-2. Playoffs seem likely, and you will likely control your own destiny for the division because all 6 of your division games are after the bye week. And so things are looking up. Question mark for Pittsburgh. We'll see if Russ continues to do well, and they play Monday night. We all like the Steelers. We all like the Bills, except for Jonathan. And I'm going to go with the Browns because I'm crazy and I want to give back my free dozen wings to someone else on this panel, but we didn't officially decide who was going to be. All right, what a great episode tonight. Next show is tomorrow night, and it comes less than 24 hours from now. 10 o'clock, we're recapping week number 10. Looking forward to the playoffs. There are a lot of good games still tomorrow, whether it's Erie and Meadville, Battle of the Bridge, Harbor Creek and Iroquois will face off, and what'll be a fun matchup there as well to cap week 10, and then we get ready for the postseason. Gents, this was fun. It was good to see you all back and break bread together, and let's hope we do this next week and predict some things, and I want to see that top 10 list because we're definitely presenting it for concession stands. So schools, make sure you email us at gemcitysportsnet@gmail.com.
Feel free to send food all week long, just so we take it day after day, really consider it.
Bribery is an option.
Want to make a thorough decision. You feel me?
Right. And if we have to do it live on the air, we'll do it live on the air too. I mean, we're like, I'm half a mile across from the GM concession stand.
Sacrifices we make for content.
So Jonathan can redeem himself on the whole cash versus card argument. All right, we are done here. Great stuff tonight as always. Thanks for watching us. Subscribe, like our channel at Gem City Sports and on YouTube, Facebook, X, and Twitch. Until tomorrow, everybody, we're out. Enjoy your Thursday. Week 10 of high school football tomorrow.